Over the last 2 years, I have exclusively used micro four thirds cameras. Here's everything that I've learned in that time. So one of the things that stopped me from jumping to micro four thirds initially was the fact that I'd invested a lot of money in full frame Canon equipment. You see, I was under the impression that a larger sensor and expensive L-series lenses were what I needed for my photography. I got it into my head that the larger sensor and the shallower depth of fields associated with that format were everything that I needed for my own photography. It wasn't until I'd tried the smaller format of the micro four thirds sensor, with a sensor roughly 1/4 of the size that I was used to, that I discovered actually I shoot with more depth of field. So one of the things that I've discovered first and foremost about myself over the last 2 years is that I don't need the shallow depth of field. I prefer a larger depth of field, and if I have a camera that can do that for me natively, then all of the better. I don't have to stop down to silly small little apertures to achieve everything that I want. So way back in the days when I was a full frame shooter, my go-to apertures were anywhere between f8 and f11. And at that point you're stopping your camera down quite substantially away from wide open, and you're running the risk of starting to soften the images a little bit. Something that I've discovered over the past 2 years, 2.5 years of shooting micro four thirds is that I prefer to shoot slightly wider apertures. f5.6 has become my go-to. It gives me enough depth of field, enough sharpness across all of my micro four thirds lenses. And we're going to take a photograph of this scene here using something that I have learned is that f5.6 literally does everything that I need. So no prizes for guessing. f5.6 is the aperture, 2.5 seconds is the exposure time, and we're down at ISO 200. I've got this little bit of rock area, you can just see it poking out of the surf there. I'm waiting for something to wash over that so I can create this long exposure swell on top of it, and we're just leading out to the sea stack over in the distance. So I can see just breaking behind the stack now there is a wave. I'm hoping this one is going to come and play ball with us. Here we go. Wait. Now it's washing over it, and now I can press the shutter button. Let's get it as the wave's retreating as well, just to make sure we've got both sides of it. Here's the first photograph from today's video of something that I've learned is that f5.6 does everything I need it to do. So the next thing that I learned over the last 2 years was to do with these things. These are the lenses on the mount that I have chosen. Now, when I first picked up a camera, I went for Canon with the EF mount, a mount that had been around since the late 80s. There was a plethora of lenses available to me, and I thought jumping to something a little bit new and a little bit fresher, I thought lens choice was going to be a limiting factor, but it really isn't. On the camera and in my hand here, there are 2 pro grade lenses from omsystem. Absolutely fantastic lenses, sharp as a tack, and they're both fixed apertures all the way through the zoom range. That was something that I associated only with expensive Canon L-series lenses. Certainly not a format that was well affordable and in my price range. And also, on top of that, not only do you have the expensive pro-grade lenses, there's a little Zucchio range as well. Affordable little kit lenses, affordable pocketable little lenses. You don't have to stick with an ancient, tried and trusted lens mount to get a good selection of lenses. It surprised me when I first picked up the cameras, just how small some of them were. It surprised me how sharp some of them were. But most importantly, it surprised me just how many lens choices there were for the micro four thirds system when I first picked up the cameras. So over the years, I've relied heavily on tripods. They've become an integral part of my photography toolkit. And I think that in part comes down to when I was using Canon DSLRs and the lack of any kind of in-body stabilization. The first camera that I had with in-body stabilization was the Olympus EM10 Mark II. Granted, a broken one, but the IBIS worked absolutely fine. And the first time I took that camera out and used it with the IBIS, I realized that I don't need to solely rely on tripods aside from when I'm using them for my long exposure photography. So over the past 2 years, my reliance on tripods has somewhat disappeared a little bit. Because these things have such great in-body, the stabilization in them is so good, I don't need to rely on the tripod to counteract my wobbliness, because let's be honest, we're all a little bit wobbly. So let's take a photograph using one of the things that I've learnt about myself is that I don't need a tripod to take a photograph. So I was able to get down to a 50th of a second there, which is a shutter speed I would have never ever gone anywhere near when I was using tripod solely. So having a camera that can counteract the wobbliness, having a camera that is nice and stabilised, enables a little bit more freedom when it comes to photography. So let's address the image quality elephant in the room. When I first jumped to Micro Four Thirds, and it involved a fairly sizable selling of some very nice full frame gear, image quality was a real question markable thing, because that's the sentence. It was a question markable thing when it came to photography. Now, realistically speaking, in the real world, larger sensors that can gather more light produce nice looking images technically. In terms of sharpness, colour depth, noise, you name it, a larger sensor is going to perform a little bit better. So I was somewhat nervous about jumping to such a small sensor and just how nice the photographs were going to look. And yes, there is a noticeable difference, but not enough to really worry about. I think we're going to get, well, no we're not, we're avoiding it, we're safe. There's not enough of a noticeable difference for me to worry about. Something that I've learnt about myself as a photographer over the last 2 years is just how much out and out image quality doesn't really matter to me. Where are you going to see my photographs? On a YouTube video, on an Instagram post, and occasionally somebody may buy a small print. But that's it. In the real world, you're not going to know, and you're probably not going to care. So let's take another photograph. I'm going to take a long exposure photograph of the C stack there, and that is all that is going to be in this frame. Just a nice minimalistic photograph of the C stack. So let's get this thing down to roughly a minute's worth of exposure. So we're already at 2 seconds there. And if I go ahead using my favourite Micro Four Thirds feature, which is Live ND, 15 seconds, 3 seconds. Let's spin this around. Let's take some of the shine off of the polarizer. Let's have a look. Let's get this down. 60 seconds. If I focus upon this now, let's take this photograph and I will show it to you. So something else that I've learned over the last couple of years using these Micro Four Thirds cameras is that a camera should really be your photography partner, shouldn't it? And it's best to pick a camera that's right for you. And the camera that I'm currently using, the omsystem OM1 Mark II, if it was a woman I would marry her. It does everything I want from a camera. Mainly speaking, I shoot long exposure photography. We have the live ND filters in there. Now, they're not going to replace actual ND filters, but they achieve the same look, especially if you're in a bit of a pinch, in a bit of a bind, and you don't have filters with yourselves. I use a circular polarizing kit, which means I have no space for a graduated filter. The camera has built-in graduated filters. 2-stop, 3-stop, 1-stop, soft, hard, medium, you name it, it is in there, and you can throw that on, and it again will bring you out of a bind if you find yourself needing to bring a sky back. It has the high resolution shooting mode. It will take 80 megapixel raw files from the 20 megapixel sensor. It has everything I need from a camera. Highlight and shadow clipping, focus peaking, it's all in there. It's a camera that I'm going to stick with, it's a camera that I'm going to use, and it's the first time I've had this in one complete package. So I'm just crouched down shooting across a little rock pool. There's some really fun little colours in there, especially with the seaweeds, all the little stones, all the cracks and everything. It just kind of looks really good fun. Yeah, it's leading up towards the lighthouse on the cliff top, which is just starting to catch a little bit of the evening light. Some of the cloud off towards the west is starting to break a little bit, so there may be a little bit of light coming through. I'm just trying to decide how zoomed in and close. I think we're actually going to do this really wide. So this is going to be 8mm, full frame equivalent view of 16mm, of course, using the 2x crop factor in this camera. Now, Another thing that I've realised over the last couple of years is, wow, does aperture and depth of field wind and rile people. Just let me take this photograph. It really upsets people for some reason. I don't understand it. So I have a lot of people come to my channel to tell me that my camera will never achieve the same shallow depth of field as a full frame camera with a 50mm f1.8 lens on, f1.8 lens. I don't care. Do you know, it really riles people for some reason. This depth of field argument is something that I've never really picked up on until I sort of stepped away from the norm, and just how obsessed people have become with it. I guess to a point I've maybe gone in the opposite direction. I like to ram home that not everybody needs to shoot that way. But at f5.6, a 25th of a second and ISO 200, without even looking, because of where I focused, I'm fairly certain that this entire photograph from this rock pool all the way up to the lighthouse will be sharp and in focus because of the camera that I'm using. And that's just a beautiful thing. Let's take another one for prosperity. So thank you very much for watching today's video, and I'd be curious to know if you've had any sort of similar experiences in the comments below. Has changing camera brands, has changing formats, has changing the techniques and the ways that you've done things, have you learned anything new about yourself and your photography in that process? Let me know down below, I'd be curious to know. So thank you very much for watching. If you have enjoyed the video, please do give it a like and a thumbs up. It does help to bring new viewers to see my content. And if you're new here and you want to see more micro fourth edge nonsense every single week, well, you can always press that subscribe button down below and you'll get just that. So until now, I'm going to love you and leave you and just say peace and goodbye.